This is the review video for topic 3.3, Empires and Their Belief Systems. And our guiding question for this topic is essentially, how did the belief systems change and remain the same during the 1450 to 1750 time period? Let's take a look at what we're learning today. Overall, the question that you need to be able to answer would be, how did belief systems change during the time period 1450 and 1750, and how did they remain the same? On the test, they will be two different short answer questions. So the first one will ask you, identify and describe how the document above represents a change in belief systems. And then the next question will be, how did the document above represent a continuity in belief systems between 1450 and 1750. So ultimately, the first thing that you're going to be able to do is you need the information to be able to write this SAQ. The other thing that we're going to work on is you're going to identify a source's point of view, purpose, historical situation, and/or audience, and explain why that's important. That'll be another assignment that will be up on Canvas on the lesson day. So let's get into this lesson. The use of belief system by empires between 1450 and 1750. Well, we know that states and empires, even before this time and through this time period, use these belief systems to unify their population, meaning that there is an identity that is made up of common ideas, common rights and wrongs, common behaviors that are going to go throughout the population. That secondly, these leads into legal codes, and these legal codes apply to everybody, including the workers of the government. And then the last thing would be the legitimacy, giving the government the right to rule. So what we see changing is, first of all, we have new ideas, and these new ideas are going to lead to a split in Christianity. That secondly, certain rulers are going to seize the power of religion for their own, controlling the religion and thereby further centralizing their government. And then finally, Dar al-Islam splitting and the rise of new synced religions. So here, right here, we see the continuities and we see the changes. Let's get the evidence. So this was made possible by the rise in literacy and the printing revolution. People are getting smarter. They're being able to read the religious documents for themselves. Plus, the building of empires really is going to also help this. Now, let's put this in perspective. When we talk about literacy rates, we're going from about 4 to 5% up to about 10 to 15%. But those middle class and those upper class people are becoming more powerful as these empires emerge, and they're coming up with the new ideas. So we're going to focus first on the new ideas, and this is the Protestant Reformation. When we talk about the Protestant Reformation, we have to begin with the church before the Protestant Reformation takes place. As we remember, both the Eastern Orthodox Church, represented on the left, and the Catholic Church, represented on the right, well, they controlled people because they controlled the keys to heaven. And this made them very, very, very powerful. But also the churches, they're getting corrupt. They're getting more worldly. Priests are beginning to focus on the riches. They're beginning to take advantage of the situation. And essentially, they're not paying attention to their mission leading people to heaven. Now, since people are getting smarter and they're reading the Bible for themselves, essentially, they're beginning to realize that this church is not practicing what they preach. On top of this, both the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church had not performed really good at the Black Death. Especially in Europe, Catholic priests would run away or they would offer very basic ideas. Sit down and pray all day and sacrifice all your stuff to be able to stop the Black Death. And it didn't work. Well, In this environment arose a man by the name of Martin Luther. Martin Luther was the son of a German miner who was educated in the University of Erfurt in Germany. He first intended to become a lawyer, but a life changing experience during a thunderstorm changed him and he became a priest. After he was ordained a Catholic priest, he went back to school and received his doctorate in theology, in religion. Now, he lived in northern Germany, and what's going on is the church is selling these things called indulgences. Essentially, what an indulgence is you can buy forgiveness. And Martin Luther questioned this. He already had um, a lot of questions about what the Catholic Church was telling him to do to receive salvation, and this further made the situation worse. So he's going to write the 95 Thesis. That's the document shown in the lower right. And what this is this is 95 issues that Martin Luther saw with the Catholic Church. Most of them were questioning the wealth and the authority and the selling of indulgences, but also the authority of the church itself and how it had six keys to heaven, yet only three had a Bible basis. He posted this on the door of the church cathedral in Württemberg, Germany, and this kind of ignited a huge debate. So, what the church did is they reacted very harshly. They basically condemned his ideas, ordered all his books burned, and gave him 2 months to recant all his beliefs, meaning take back what he said, or he would be burned at the stake as a heretic. On his trial in Worms, Germany, that's a town, he replied to his charges, "Unless I am convinced by evidence of the scriptures or by plain reason, for I do not accept the authority of the Pope or the councils alone, since it is established that they have often erred and contradicted themselves. I am bound by scriptures I have cited. My conscience is captive to the word of God. I cannot and will not recant anything. For me, it is neither safe nor right to go against conscience. God help me. Amen." What saved him is a lot of the princes in Germany wanted to seize power away from the church and become the ruler of their own domain. So he's arguing that faith alone is what gets you to heaven, not the ceremonies that represent the sacraments or the keys. He very much wanted people to learn religion for themselves, so he translated the Bible into German. And he also stressed that women needed to be educated to a level where they could also read the Bible. As you can see, Lutheranism, represented by this map in red, was the start of this change and did bring out a lot of new ideas. But you can also see that a majority of Europe is still Catholic, the yellow areas. But what Luther's ideas did is they spread to new people. This is where two other groups came. We begin with John Calvin. John Calvin, well, he was a French reformer who had moved to Geneva, Switzerland, and he and Luther actually exchanged a great deal of letters. And him, reading the Bible for himself, came up with the idea of predestination. Predestination is essentially the belief that God had determined long ago, even before the start of the world, who was going to be saved and who wasn't. And how you revealed that is through your actions. So he created a theocracy in Geneva in which those that are saved could live and those that weren't saved would go away. And this became the model for the Presbyterian Church in Scotland and the French Protestants called the Huguenots in France. Eventually, this would even influence the Puritans, who are the pilgrims who came to America when it was a colony. Another group was the Anabaptists, and their interpretation of the Bible focused on the idea that adults needed to be baptized and not children because baptism was something that an adult only could make a decision. They also argued for separation of church and state and was very influential in the American Constitution. So, what we've seen so far is that we know that the continuity was in unity, religious codes, and legitimacy, but it also led to new ideas. This is the change. So, the Protestant Reformation, the development of Lutheranism, Calvinism, and the Anabaptists, they essentially created these new ideas that wouldn't go away in Europe. Other leaders began to seize power of the religion for their own power. When we look at this, we're focusing on two countries, England and Russia. On the left, we see King Henry VIII. And King Henry VIII came to power in some very, very dicey circumstances. His father had seized the throne in the War of the Roses. And the problem that caused the War of the Roses was essentially there was no male heir. Well, Henry VII had two sons. The older son died, and Henry VIII became king. When his wife, Catherine of Aragon, she's Spanish, essentially could only give him a daughter, he wanted a divorce. Well, being a Catholic, he sought to get a divorce, but the Pope said no. And so this caused him to seize the Catholic Church in England, create the Church of England or Anglicanism, and assume control of it. So what he's doing is he's seizing church power for himself. The Anglican Church during this time period is no different from the Catholic Church. Then we have Peter the Great. And Peter the Great was the Tsar of Russia, very powerful. And he sought to create his own authority as leader by removing the patriarchs of the Eastern Christian Church and making he himself the head of the church in Russia. Both of these were purely political, removing an enemy and making sure that they were the power in their areas. So we've seen not only new religious ideas in the Protestant Reformation, but we've also seen rulers seizing the power of religion for their own. Now, the last big change was Darul Islam splitting and new synced religions, and these are going to take place both in Darul Islam. Well, we know about the Sunnis and the Shias. This happened way back when Muhammad ascended to heaven at the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. There was a question as to who would succeed him. Those who thought it should just be the best man for the job, they became the Sunnis, and those who felt that it should be Ali, a relative of Muhammad, became the Shias. Well, Sunnis and Shias, they still existed throughout Darul Islam between 1200 and 1450. But when we have the Turks invading and taking over areas, each of them took over areas where Sunniism or Shiaism was very powerful. The Ottomans, well, they took over an area in which Sunniism was very powerful in the Middle East into Northern Africa. And so they're going to adopt that branch of Islam to rule. They also took over Mecca and claimed to be the Caliph of Islam. The Safavids, led by Shah Ismail, invaded Persia and took over. And essentially, this was a hotbed for Shia beliefs. Not only did they adopt the Shia beliefs to unify their population, but also they used the belief of the 12th Imam. There were 12 important imams or religious leaders in Islam. 11 lived and died, and the 12th one vanished and would reappear to carry the Shias into glory. Well, he never came out and he said he was the 12th Imam, but the people that was helping him, they spread the rumors. Well, they, being Sunni and Shia, didn't get along too well and fought numerous battles, especially the Battle of Chaldiran, which was the first battle in which gunpowder weapons were used exclusively. We also see the Mughals. And the Mughals, they were Sunni, but their leader, Akbar, was incredibly religiously tolerant and would give land, money, and political positions to both Hindus and Muslims. He even supported the rise of a new religion, Sikhism. This was a blend of Hinduism and some Islamic influences, not only from the Sufi, but also the Sunni branch. So he's supporting that and allowing that religion to grow. Akbar also allowed the first Catholic church in India to be opened in Goa. So when we look at this, our debrief and summary, we go back to this question. Consider this to be like an essay question. Well, what could you write? Continuities. One, religion is still used to unify, rule, and legitimize empires. That's something that continues on, and to be honest with you, is going to end after 1750 with the Enlightenment. Despite the Protestant Reformation, Catholicism remained a major religious force in Europe. And because of the use of it by the Spanish and the Portuguese, does spread into the New World. Finally, Islam is going to remain a major religion in both Asia and Africa. But when we talk about the changes, well, the Protestant Reformation led to new ideas, which is going to lead to new branches. Leaders are going to seize the power of the church for their own good, further centralizing their power. Darul Islam splits into Sunni and Shia branches. And finally, new sect religions in India emerge. Now, there's an assignment that you need to do if you're watching this as a makeup video. It's about hipping documents to find the point of view, the purpose, and the audience.